Okay, I got something super cool and I want to talk about it. If you've seen this video, then you know I've gotten this. It's called ironing film. It was given to me by artkalbeads.com. And this is seriously one of the coolest things I've gotten to use in a long time, so I'm pretty excited about it. This has been in this tube being shipped all the way from China. The ironing film really wants to stay curled up, so I had to kind of prop it open. That way it wouldn't curl up on me as I'm trying to iron, because that could get kind of awkward and totally ruin a melt, which I don't want to do. I'm already nervous enough doing this in the first place. Now, this isn't the first time I've gotten ironing film. I've gotten it before when I got a shipment of artkalbeads, but these sheets were just way too small for me to actually use because I kind of make giant bead sprites. If you made it this far, you might as well subscribe because you enjoy my content, and I'd love to hear from you in the comments. But now we get to the most daunting step, melting all of these beads together. I tried taping that left side down, but it didn't work very well, so I just kind of added a lot more tape on that side. Thankfully though, the ironing process was just getting started, so it didn't matter too much that it rolled up on me. However, this is the absolutely coolest part of using this film. I can actually see through it and watch all of the beads melt. When you're doing the tape method, you can't see through it obviously. So you kind of just have to feel it out as you're melting it to get where you want to be. So using this ironing film and tape will give you a crazy amount of control over your melt. A lot of this really only applies if you like to do full melts like I do, because I think it's insanely cool when you make a big bead sprite and it comes out pixelated just like the characters do in the games. So if you look here, you can actually see how all of these holes are starting to close up. I know tons of people were confused about how a circle can turn into a square after you melt it, but that's just because they're all stacked together, and as they melt, they start to fill in all the little gaps, which ends up being a square. Especially since they all melt at the same time, so the gap fills up across the whole bead sprite at the same rate. I was also expecting the film to get hot, or to move around or wrinkle as I was using it, but it stayed totally flat and totally cool. I was really pleasantly surprised because sometimes I have to melt my bead sprites for a long period of time to get them perfectly pixelated, so this stuff was kind of perfect and I love it. I just have to kind of cut it down so that it's not so big. I need a nice happy medium, not a piece that's the size of my table. At this point you can really see that the melt's coming together and a lot of the beads are closed up. There's still quite a bit of beads in the middle that aren't quite there, but I always leave those ones for the end because they tend to get melted a lot. Part of that is just because my Cricut Easy Press here is kind of big, so you end up hitting the middle multiple times over and over and over. So over time, naturally those will all melt out. However, if you end up melting those first and then you go around the edges, you end up causing blowouts because the middle will melt super quick. I did a little time jump here so that you can see what the final bead sprite looks like fully melted. This was a part that I didn't think was going to be very difficult for some reason, and it kind of was. Normally when you have parchment paper, you can just rip that right off like crazy fast. But the ironing film I had to roll, and on top of that, I didn't think I needed to cut back my tape, so the tape got stuck to the roll. I had a little bit of a nervous panic because at this stage you want to get the film off as fast as possible so that it can flatten. I really didn't want to ruin the bead sprite at this point and have to remake an entire Appletun again. So painstakingly, I had to very slowly roll this thing up and unstick the tape. If I ended up just rolling up the ironing film and ripping the tape off as I normally do, the sprite would have come out bent. And I really pride myself on having totally flat melts that stay flat. So I definitely had a little bit of panic trying to hurry but also not ruin this thing. Thankfully though, as I got about the halfway point, it came right off and it didn't cause a problem at all. So my fears were not justified. I'll definitely need to practice some more when I make one of these. Overall though, I love this ironing film. It was really cool. One of the super cool things about using the ironing film too is that you get this shine. I tried to move my camera around here so that you can see the shine, but it makes the fully melted side really glossy. It's super neat. However, there are some drawbacks to using the ironing film that I'm gonna have to pay close attention to. The main thing I noticed is that because it's plastic, you can get little divots or scratches in the ironing film, and that will be transferred into your perler. There was a couple really minor imperfections that happened on the Appletun that I don't think you could really notice unless you were looking for them, but I noticed them. However, Totodile here, I knew what I was looking for, so I grabbed the most perfect piece I could find because I didn't want any of those imperfections on here. The other thing I noticed with the ironing film is that it doesn't 100% close all the beads. It's more like 99%. If you look really close in the center of these beads, you'll see there's a tiny little dot that doesn't get filled in, which I know is just nitpicking and I'm a perler bead maniac, but still, it was cool. I really enjoyed this whole process. And if you've made it this far, you did too, and I'm very thankful that you're here. I'm gonna try this ironing film out on a lot more Pokemon, so stick around, subscribe, comment, share, and I'll talk to you in the comments. Okay, bye!